afternoon. Hello there, Jordan.
Hey there.
We are coming online here on YouTube momentarily. And here we are.
Cool.
Let's see. What am I looking at? Okay. All right. So, good evening, everyone. We are in the short strokes on the two essays on analytical psychology by C.G. Jung, volume 7 of the collected works. We've almost read it cover to cover, and maybe we'll finish in 2 weeks or so. I don't think there's a first version of the summary and a second version of the summary. I think I'm going to skip the first version of the summary and go to the second version.
Okay.
But first, Jung took a lot of heat about this book in various ways, I guess, at least so he suggests here. And so he added an addendum to this essay. And so that's what paragraph 503 is about. So I will read that. And Jordan, you might notice that Nick Lawrence has joined us.
Oh, look at that. He's all black at the bottom of my screen.
Yeah, he went to get some food, and he's coming back. So cool. Until he comes back, and he is the one that put us up to reading this book, by the way, long ago. All right, so paragraph 503. I'm well aware that this discussion has landed me on perilous ground. It is virgin territory which psychology has still to conquer, and I am obliged to do pioneer work. I am painfully conscious of the inadequacy of many of my formulations, though unfortunately this knowledge is of little avail when it comes to improving on them. I must therefore beg the reader not to be put off by the shortcomings of my presentation, but to try to feel his way into what I am endeavoring to describe. I would like to say a few words more about the concept of individuality in relation to the personal and the collective in order to clarify this central problem. You want to go on with 504? Yep.
Certainly. As I have already pointed out, individuality reveals itself primarily in the particular selection of those elements of the collective psyche which constitute the persona. These components, as we have seen, are not individual, but collective. It is only their combination, or the selection of a group already combined in a pattern, that is individual. Thus, we have an individual nucleus which is covered by the personal mask. It is in the particular differentiation of the persona that the individuality exhibits its resistance to the collective psyche. By analyzing their persona, we confer a great value on the individuality and thus accentuate its conflict with the collectivity. This conflict consists, of course, in a psychological opposition within the subject. The dissolution of the compromise between the two halves of a pair of opposites renders their activity more intense. In purely unconscious natural life, this conflict does not exist, despite the fact that purely physiological life has to satisfy individual and collective requirements equally. The nature and unconscious attitude
the natural and
unconscious attitude is harmonious. The body, its faculties, and its needs furnish of their own nature the rules and limitations that prevent any excess or disproportion. But because of its one-sidedness, which is fostered by conscious and rational intention, a differentiated psychological function always tends to disproportion. The body also forms the base basis of what we might call the mental individuality, which is, as it were, an expression of corporeal individuality and can never come into being unless the rights of the body are acknowledged. Conversely, the body cannot thrive unless the mental individuality is accepted. At the same time, it is in the body that the individual is in the highest degree similar to other individuals, although each individual body is distinguishable from all other bodies. Equally, every mental or moral individuality differs from all the others, and yet it is so constituted as to render every man equal to all other men or people. Every living being that is able to develop itself individually without constraint will best realize, by the very perfection of its individuality, the ideal type of its species, and by the same token will achieve a collective value.
Yeah.
I find
Go ahead.
We can keep going. Just one quick comment though, that because of its one-sidedness, which is fostered by conscious and rational intention, a differentiated psychological function always tends to disproportion. And I don't think that's negative. I think it's a wonderfully wordy way to say personality, and it has a focus and it has a bent. You know, parts of it are more of majority than other parts in minority. So that would be the disproportion. So I think, just to clarify, that I don't see that as a negative. I think it's just a diagrammatic expression of there is a nucleus, as he mentioned.
Yeah. Good evening, Justin. Nice to have you here with us tonight. We're going to go to about 9 o'clock Eastern time tonight. I am still teaching. I'm on the extended sub list at the moment, but it's interesting to finally be in a position where people are actually bidding for my services. And so we have 125 schools in our county. 69 of them are elementary schools, and turns out one of them is on Fort Meade, which is where the National Security Agency is. So the question I got from the principal today in preparation for an official invite was, do you still have your military ID card? And obviously that is a problem for a civilian school teacher and school principal on a military base, especially one like Fort Meade, which is highly closed down to everybody else.
Well, thankful that you get your regular haircuts on base. So even just if that was the only reason, you probably still kept it just to keep your haircut good.
Yeah. Not that I have that much hair anymore. It's thinning, but I remember in the 7th grade it was back there too, so it hasn't gone that far. But
and I think it's like, that's a perfect reason for vanity. Oh, I got to keep my military ID so I get a proper haircut.
Right. Amen. Good point. Okay, so let's see what we get through tonight. Paragraph 505, the persona is always identical with a typical attitude dominated by a single psychological function, for example, by thinking, feeling, or intuition. This one-sidedness necessarily results in the relative repression of the other functions. In consequence, the persona is an obstacle to an individual's development. The dissolution of the persona is therefore an indispensable condition for individuation. It is, however, impossible to achieve individuation by conscious intention, because conscious intention invariably leads to a typical attitude that excludes whatever does not fit in with it. The assimilation of unconscious contents leads, on the contrary, to a condition in which conscious intention is excluded and is supplanted by a process development, by a process of development that seems to us irrational. This process alone signifies individuation, and its product is individuality, as we have just defined, particular and universal at once. So long as the persona exists, individuality is repressed and hardly betrays its existence except in the choice of its personal accessories. By its actor's wardrobe, one might say, only when the unconscious is assimilated does the individuality emerge more clearly, together with the psychological phenomenon which links the ego with the non-ego and is designated by the word attitude. But this time it is no longer a typical attitude, but an individual one.
I wrote an H with a bunch of N after it, just a in regards to the one-sidedness necessarily results in the relative repression of the other functions. And I don't agree there. It very, very often it does, but I see that there's probably a dominant one or pair, and then the other two are more like admin or support staff. Because I mean, personally, even in my business, I mean, intuition, feeling, thinking, and sensation are all how I speak at the table. I have to use all four, or I'm really not, worth a rat's. So I think, though, I agree, though, that there is a difference between the primary and the subsidiary psychological functions. I just don't agree that in a predominant sense the other three would be repressed. I think they may be less developed. I mean, if I look long and hard at myself, I have to say that it's I'd love to say the intuition or the feeling or the sensation where one of those was the biggest thing, but I think the thinking is what's overdeveloped in me, and it utilizes the other three. I'd rather it be the intuition and the feeling, frankly.
Right.
But
well, I ran into this today. Okay, because I was teaching a 6th grade class, social studies, and there was one young woman, and I'm talking about an 11-year-old, who just refused to do the work. And she says, I don't want to be here. I'm not interested in this. Not at all. And so she obviously had an attitude. And what this is basically saying is you're not going to be able to change the attitude. She's got to experience some comeuppance in her own life without you trying to argue it out of her.
Did she just 4-year-old level staunchly saying no, or did she communicate a more robust, here's why? I mean, the marrow of the matter or the heart of the matter of why she didn't want to be there?
No, she did both. She said she wanted to be home in bed, among other things. In fairness, these kids are, get run pretty hard during school. I mean, for me, it's kind of mild because I did my Marine Corps stuff. But those kids are really pushed to the limit. Every hour they're changing classes and they have to get into something else and then get out of it and have a relationship with their friends and have a relationship with their teachers. It's hard. and, get up early in the morning, and they've been having trouble with buses. So school buses haven't been available for the most part this fall until now. I guess they've hired some new bus drivers, but anyway, it's been tough. But now I see, based on what Jung is saying here, that probably there's just nothing you can do except just let them have their comeuppance in due course.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, okay, so
Well, just one further question on that. Is she so resistant because she's really interested, but she's afraid to commit?
she's very committed to other things.
Okay. All right.
Right.
I'm just
okay. I mean,
trying to
she's,
find how to
I
get a
think she's, feeling her oats for the first time as an 11-year-old girl.
Okay. I was
And,
just trying to get a respectful, what's her bent, her way, not trying to,
yeah,
in some way change her, just to get a sense of how to better respect the dignity and difference that she's expressing, that her life, her way, which, I mean, good for her. I mean, at the same time, like you said, the comeuppance, the responsibility of what consequences that may occur, bring. There you go. I mean, kind of.
yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, in some of these lives, it's hard to see how you can make much difference. Others, it makes a lot of difference.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
506.
Okay.
Huh?
I was going to say, okay. You want
to read it?
I'll go ahead.
Mhm.
You just did the last one. So,
Okay.
the paradox in this formulation arises from the same root as the ancient dispute about universals. The proposition, animal nullumque animal genus ace, makes the fundamental paradox clear and intelligible. And null animal versus where the animal is. I don't get the complete print.
I don't either, yeah.
So the realia, these are the particular, the individual. The universalia exists psychologically, but are based on real resemblance between particulars. Thus, the individual is that particular thing which possesses in greater or lesser degree the qualities upon which we base the general conception of collectivity, in quotes. And the more individual it is, the more it develops those qualities which are fundamental to the collective conception of humanity. 507. In the hope of unraveling these tangled problems, I would like to emphasize the architectonics of the factors to be considered. We have to do with the following fundamental concepts. Number one, the world of consciousness and reality. By this is meant those contents of consciousness which consist of perceived images of the world and of our conscious thoughts and feelings about it. Number two, the collective unconscious. By this is meant that part of the unconscious which consists, on the one hand, of unconscious perceptions of external reality, and on the other, of all the residues of the phylogenetic perspective and adaptive functions. A reconstruction of the unconscious view of the world would yield a picture showing how external reality has been perceived from time immemorial. The collective unconscious contains, or is, an historical mirror image of the world. It too is a world, but a world of images. Number three, since the world of consciousness, like the world of the unconscious, is to a large extent collective, these two spheres together form the collective psyche in the individual. Number four, the collective psyche must be contrasted with a fourth concept, namely the concept of individuality. The individual stands, as it were, between the conscious part of the collective psyche and the unconscious part. He is the reflecting surface in which the world of consciousness can perceive its own unconscious historical image, even as Schopenhauer says that the intellect holds a mirror up to the universal will. Accordingly, The individual would be a point of intersection or a dividing line, neither conscious nor unconscious, but a bit of both. Number 5, the paradoxical nature of the psychological individual must be contrasted with that of the persona. The persona is conscious all round, so to speak, or is at least capable of becoming so. It represents a compromised formation between external reality and the individual. In essence, therefore, it is a function for adapting the individual to the real world. The persona thus occupies a place midway between the real world and individuality. And number 6, beyond individuality, which appears to be the innermost core of ego consciousness and of the unconscious alike, we find the collective unconscious, the place between the individual and the collective unconscious, corresponding to the person's position between the individual and external reality. The place between the individual and the collective unconscious, corresponding to the persona's position between the individual and external reality, appears to be empty. Experience has taught me, however, that here too a kind of persona exists, but a persona of a compensatory nature, which, in parentheses, in a man, person, or in a man would be called anima. The anima would thus be a compromised formation between the individual and the unconscious world. That is, the world of historical images, or in quotes, primordial images. We frequently meet the anima in dreams, where it appears as a feminine being in a man, and as a man, animus, in a woman. A good description of the anima figure can be found in Spitler's Imago. In his Prometheus and Epimetheus, she appears as the soul of Prometheus, and in his Olympian Spring as the soul of Zeus. Hey, Nick.
So there's, basically no hope for these kids, because these kids, at some level are just guided by the unconscious, and getting them out of it is basically, what Jung is basically saying here is it's basically impossible. That, they have to come out of it on their own stick by having bad experiences, I suppose.
Well, who was it who said?
Because I see these kids in all over the school system, and they all have the same persona, right? The same collective persona.
What's interesting,
or a series of them.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting that I think Buckminster Fuller made a distinction. He said, the environment is that place of everything except you, and the universe is the place of everything, including you. And I thought it was an interesting thing as you focus down to an environment, which is a smaller scale universe, as it were, that then you become that piece that's missing because you're observing. And in a sense, he's, in one sense, taking the individual out of the equation of the environment. And then you'd have to go to the universe of the individual for the internal environment to get back to the person again. So, but
okay, say the Buckminster Fuller quote again.
The environment is everything except you. The universe is everything, including you. And to that, I would add, and then the universe of you is an inner environment that includes you. So there seems to be a little bit of a non-reflexive, not a direct mirror across an axis, but a distinction he's making that the observer is not part of the environment because they're observing. And it's a little bit loose a connection, but at the same time, it's an interesting concept just to entertain and play with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of these kids, I just want to shake them, but I can't. I'm not allowed to touch them, of course. and um,
Well, I understand your frustration. I mean, when I taught martial arts to inner city kids across the summer, where the guts of the program where they were taking all the classes that had failed,
mhm,
so
mhm,
they didn't have to fall back and they could keep moving, but they had more one-on-one and one-on-five kind of connection with the teachers. And
yeah.
but I noticed it because I didn't allow them to talk. And people said, well, how did you do that? I said, I didn't allow it. And, when someone did talk, I just made them sit down on the floor while everyone did all the forms and stuff around them, all instructed to not look at them. And I think now that would probably be looked at as abuse,
Yeah, maybe.
because it was completely demeaning. But what happened is then they did want to come back to the table.
Oh, yeah, they
And
do
so
want to get back in the group.
and
Yeah.
they'd signed a silent contract. But what I found is those kids that, got so punished on the floor, after they came back and they were quiet, I think it was the first time they were quiet in their life. And
Mhm,
they'd only experienced inner city noise and chaos, chain link, concrete, steel, bricks, dirt,
mhm,
trash, and such. And every single one of those people, their grades went up to A's from
mhm,
F's almost immediately, because they became engaged, because they weren't stuck in the gear of chatter, like they had to keep filling the silence. But everybody else in the class who was quiet at least went up one, if not two letter grades. And
mhm.
I found that, how do you change them? Well, if you're teaching the class, you can't be silent. I mean, you don't have that luxury.
Yeah,
So since I was dealing with a physical teaching, I had
yeah.
that luxury.
Right. Okay,
Situation.
let's go for the gold. We'll get to the summary here directly. Okay, paragraphs 508, 9, and 10, 510. To the degree that the ego identifies with the persona, the anima, like everything unconscious, is projected into the real objects of our environment. She is regularly to be found, therefore, in the woman we are in love with. This can be seen easily enough from the expressions we use when in love. The poets, too, have supplied a good deal of evidence in this respect. The more normal a person is, the less will be the demonic qualities of the anima appear in the objects of his immediate environment. They are projected upon more distant objects from which no immediate disturbance is to be feared. But the more sensitive a person is, the closer these demonic projections will come, until in the end they break through the family taboo and produce the typical neurotic complications of a family romance. If the ego identifies with the persona, the subject's center of gravity lies in the unconscious. It is then practically identical with the collective unconscious because the whole personality is collective. In these cases, there is a strong pull toward the unconscious and at the same time, violent resistance to it on the part of consciousness because the destruction of conscious ideals is feared. In certain cases, found chiefly among artists or highly emotional people, the ego is localized, not in the persona, the function of relationship to the real world, but in the anima, the function of relationship to the collective unconscious. Here, individual and persona are alike unconscious. The collective unconscious then intrudes into the conscious world, and a large part of the real world becomes an unconscious content. Such persons have the same demonic fear of reality as ordinary people have of the unconscious.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd have to think that one through for a bit.
Well, I like the last sentence because it plays back to the which of the psychological functions is the developed one. And as he said, repressed, I would say subsidiary or less developed, not necessarily underdeveloped. But that the people who have the same demonic fear of reality as ordinary people have of the unconscious. So ordinary people being those who live out here, and the other people who live inside. And people who don't understand the bridge of both to connect them can fear, either reality or the unconscious, instead of embracing them both and realizing that just because you're on one side, the other isn't some, scary monster, because it's so different than what you either believe or have a deep knowing of.
Yeah, I guess. I have to think through it. But anyway, we have a mystery guest here, Nick Lawrence, who, as in his other persona, approached me some years ago and wanted to do, I guess he wanted to do tarot readings and such, which we did for years. And then he wanted to read this book. And here we've come to the conclusion, the summary of the book.
I should clarify readings about tarot rather than readings of tarot.
Right. Readings about tarot. That's right.
Right. Rather than tarot reading, it's reading about tarot. Right.
And so we enjoyed that, and there are lots of video about it on this YouTube channel. And we've enjoyed reading this book, I keep telling myself.
So thanks for the impetus, Nick.
Yeah, happy I could provide that. I'm sad that I didn't take the journey with you all, but I'm glad that you guys have stayed the course.
Right.
You just plugged in the Hot Wheels thing and threw us down on your track and left, and we just
So I want to read the final conclusion, the second version of the summary for next week. So that we have a full hour to work on it. And so what I would like to hear from Nick now is what's happening in your life. Are you still cooking?
Yeah, I'm still cooking at the moment. Over the past, I'm trying to think when the last time I spoke with each of you might have been. I think it was just before, or maybe 2 months or so before you went to Montana.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no. I remember talking to you just after you came back from Montana.
Okay.
And just after that, things kind of petered out for me. But things have looked quite different over the past few months. I started playing music again.
Oh, good.
Got the opportunity to go play a whole bunch this summer with several of my friends in a couple of different groups and travel around. And
what are you playing?
I play guitar.
Guitar, man.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I got to travel around North Carolina and Tennessee and Virginia, and
terrific.
Get to kind of cut my teeth again on some stuff that I haven't done in quite a while. And that's kind of what I've been doing. That's really it. I haven't been doing too much psychology related stuff. I haven't been in school this past semester, and I've just been playing a bunch of music.
How much more schooling do you have to go?
Quite a lot.
Okay,
Probably
because
in the ballpark of at least 3 years.
3 years worth.
Yeah.
Well, here's interesting gouge now. In my county, which is a fairly upscale county in Maryland, they will allow you to substitute teach if you have 45 credit hours, only 45 credit hours. So that's like being halfway through your sophomore year of college.
Yeah.
And the pay isn't bad. I mean, all things considered, I mean, it's not great either, but it's quite, quite believable. And if you get an extended sub position, you get an extra $30 a day. And so I've gradually been working through our processes here, and I am trying to get a full-time teaching position, but I didn't really start to think about that until the school year had already started. So most positions were filled by that point. And so I just started as a daily sub, but I have gone all over my county, and I've taught pre-K through 12th grade, like one day at a time and a different school every day. And it's quite a challenging process. But on the other hand, now I know what grades I want to try to teach and where I think I can have an influence on young people and on their minds. By the time they get into high school, they're pretty jaded, and the only thing you can do is just let them play with their iPhones, because they won't listen to you any other way. Yeah. So you just tell them, this is the assignment, good luck to you. And then they're just staring at their iPhones the whole time. And I just came to the conclusion that maybe we should stop high school entirely and just take them through like the 8th grade, and then turn them loose on their iPhones and wish them luck. because I know, as the computer revolution has happened in my lifetime, that this one Indian fellow put a laptop in a alcove in what used to be Madras, India, is now Chennai, and he just left it there to see what would happen. And he comes back in 2 months, and this little 8-year-old kid comes up to him and says, "We need a faster modem." And so, these kids are learning things way faster than I ever did, honestly. And the education they're getting is truly terrific. But for example, the Kipling's The Six Serving Men of the journalism career, which are who, what, when, where, why, and how, right? I was not introduced to that. I remember being introduced to that in the 10th grade. Okay. And I have met 4th graders who know what that is now. Okay. And in terms of the Socratic method and briefing cases like we would do in law school, I've seen that being done in the 10th grade now in my community. And so these kids are way ahead of where we were in my time, and maybe not where you were, but in any case, that might be something for you to do in the wintertime if there's not too much music to play.
Yeah, perhaps. There certainly is a lull in terms of music, and that would be something to look into. I don't know if that's the same for North Carolina or the county that I'm in, but...
Well, I do know that there is a teacher shortage everywhere, because the GOP has dumbed down the teaching profession terribly. And, they've screwed teachers right down to the point where very few people want to take the positions. But the pay is not all that bad. I mean, if you can start in my county at about $50,000 a year, which isn't too bad. I mean, you're doing considerably better than a shrimp boat captain at that level.
Yes, that's certainly more money than I make now.
Yeah. But in order to be certified that way, you have to have a college degree. But just to go around and take these jobs, like playing gigs, one day at a time, or I just completed a 4-day gig, which was quite good. I enjoyed. But then I could have been hived off. Instead, that school hired me on an extended basis. So now I've got the higher pay scale for substituting, and I go to that school every day. but still as utility infielder, which means I have to take any class they assign me. But the teachers are required to do good sub plans, good plans. So I haven't walked into any classroom where I didn't know what was called for in that class.
Nice. I have to say two things, Nick. One, nice stash.
Yeah.
I don't think you had that last year when I saw you last. And
Perhaps not.
and kudos to you for traveling and picking your music back up and recutting your teeth. And it sounds a lot like a, your life, your way kind of thing. And I think that just sounds great. I mean, so good for you.
And I see our friend Rhea has joined us. And Rhea,
I have, but I can't make my video work. I'm supposed, I've got it on video.
well, put your cursor up over the upper right corner of the image that you are supposed to be in.
Yeah.
And it will highlight 3 little dots.
Okay.
Okay. Do you see that? And so click on that and you get a drop down menu.
Okay.
And I think the second item is start video.
Okay, but mine says stop video because
so it thinks you have your video going.
I know.
Okay, well.
In the past, I've had to shut down everything and come back in.
And reboot. Well, it wouldn't be worth it for tonight because I'm limiting these Monday night events to 1 hour now.
Okay, so I'll just be quiet and listen.
Well, we sort of completed the lesson for today. So next week we are going to do the summary of this entire book, or at least the last essay in the book.
Okay.
Well, Rhea, since your whole screen, I see it's all black, then you can just be you're the voice of the unconscious rather than having to be quiet.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Nice to kind of see you, Rhea.
Yeah.
Likewise, Nicholas. Good to see you.
Yep. So we have made some progress, and we're still cooking along on Wednesday afternoons. I have not changed it to 5 o'clock yet because I have an interview on Friday for an elementary school job, 5th grade, to teach 5th grade permanently. And if I get that job, then it's very early in the morning. It's a 5 o'clock wake up, but you get home by 3 every day. And the kids arrive at 7:20 or something in the morning, if you can believe that. Can you imagine getting your kids out the door before 7 in the morning?
No.
And having them walk into school, they do it. And
it's funny. I used to always, we're supposed to get there at 7:20 and start, and I would get there exactly at 7 and give myself 20 minutes to sit down in front of my locker on the floor and do all the geometry proofs, and to just, it's like, doing a slide rule walking down the hall, square root of every room number before you get to the next room. I mean, so I get it though. It's getting people up that early is
no, but they do it. More power to them all.
No, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's abusive because kids are not in good shape at that time of the morning.
No.
Yeah. But they claim that high school students need more time to sleep, and actually middle school needs the most. So the kindergarten goes, and then they send the buses around and they bring in the high school, and then they send the buses around again and bring in the middle school. And so middle school doesn't really get going until 9:15, but the elementaries have been already going for 2 hours at that point, believe it or not.
Well, maybe first period should just be a nap class.
First period is a kind of homeroom class. So the classes I was teaching this week didn't even begin until 9:45. The first period was 9:45. So anyway, it's just interesting to see how they're keeping this ship running, because it's a huge school district here. We have 84,000 students and 125 schools. 69 of them are elementary schools. So you can guess what's going to happen to the 19 middle schools they have.
Well, Nick, do you play 6-string, 12-string, or electric or acoustic, or both, or?
I can play both, but in what I've been asked to do over the past 6 or so months is play electric guitar, kind of Telecaster, play a country style.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nick, did you finish your school?
No, I did not. Not yet.
Did you drop out, or are you plugging along?
Well, I'm not in school right now. I took this previous semester off.
Oh, I see. Are you still going to do psychology?
Most likely, yeah.
Oh, good.
That'll be good. That'll be good.
We need you. The world needs you.
Oh gosh, the world needs you so badly. This book that I've just completed at the suggestion of Chiron is called The Schizophrenia Complex, and we're going to interview the author of it on January 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern time, so 11 a.m. Pacific time. And it's just an amazing book, because this woman is she's a Jungian analyst, and her son, all of a sudden at age about 23 or 24, had a psychotic break, and they got him through it. And so part of the story is about him, but it's really about the complex that develops in people around schizophrenia. It's not about people with schizophrenia per se. It's about people who have schizophrenia in their life experience. And so it's really a fascinating story.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, because there's the who cares for the caregiver kind of thing, and not just who cares for them, but specifically how does that environment affect them, and in ways that are structural, even
right
from their perspective.
As I was reading it, I was seeing my own experiences growing up in it, because it's talking about how schizophrenics fall into a chaos. Well, I was thinking about my schooling, and I went to 8 schools in the first 6 years, or 7 years counting kindergarten. So in kindergarten through 6th grade, I went to 8 schools. And boy, if that isn't taking a child and putting them in the midst of chaos, a lot. It was a lot.
Well, it is. I think that's what's interesting. There's kind of a schizophrenia of the environment there, but it's interesting to me with schizophrenics how few internal boundaries they have. They don't have the glass walls that are permeable, and so everything it feels get lost in an inability to make distinctions, and everything's happening all at once. And
I didn't understand, Skip, what your connection was between that experience and schizophrenia.
Well, because schizophrenics fall into a psychological situation which is chaotic, but they're unable.
But your parents weren't schizophrenic, and
no, they weren't. But my environment was in sort of an induction to schizophrenia. Okay, she's describing her son's experiences, and it was reminding me of this experience of mine where I kept getting pulled out of a environment in which I was stable and thrown, taken across the country. I mean, I went from Inyokern, California, in the middle of the Mojave Desert, to Kodiak, to Papua, Michigan, which is the fruit belt of Michigan, to upstate New York, and then to Norfolk in in those first 7 years of my schooling. And so the environments are totally different. And I would just get plopped into a school. And so now what do? Well, fortunately, I was not schizophrenic at the time. So even though it was a chaotic situation, I pretty quickly got the gouge that if I just sat still, eventually everything would form around me.
Well, right.
Well,
right.
I'm kind of with Rhea though. I'm not getting the connection. It feels to me that's more nomadic than schizophrenic, because the chaos there is not all the time. It's
And the parents are
period.
stable.
And the
Yeah,
parents.
and
are
the
stable.
parents were stable. That's right. But you know, it was wild still. You know, when I was 6 years old, we drove from Inyokern to Philadelphia, where we spent 2 months with my grandparents. And then we drove from my mother, who was then 25 years old, set out across the country with 3 little kids. I was the oldest at 5.5 or so. And she drove all the way across the United States to Seattle in 1952. You know, it's just an amazing thing. There are not many women that would take that task on today with superhighways. And that was
I think it is
a 10-day
amazing,
trip in
and it's
those
a great
days.
travel.
I think
Great
that
travel
this
and
book,
nomadic, but I kind of feel like I'm siding with Rhea though, about your parents were stable, so I don't think that.
Well,
It just doesn't
it
seem to
sounds
be
like this book,
a
it
level.
sounds like this book is going to be beneficial to the family and caregivers of people. Is
Yeah.
that correct? I mean, it's
yes, that's
that's what
the objective. Yeah, that's the objective. It was.
it's going to be really valuable, because as we see, we're having more and more and more ADHD, more and more autism spectrum, more and more and more bipolarism. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a long time in my experience with one of my daughters before I read in a book, when one person in the family has mental illness, it impacts everyone in the family.
Yeah, and
I
that's
could
what the book
see
is
how
about.
I could see how my younger daughter was just not, I mean, so that's good. I'm glad she's writing it, and I'll look forward to the interview myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's called the Schizophrenia Complex, and we're going to do a wisdom path on it. It'll be at 11 a.m. California time on the 21st of January.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Okay.
Well, and that's a good point, Rhea, too, about, when one person in a family has a mental illness, the rest of the family is affected, because I've noticed and seen also in families where, for example, there's very serious abuse of one form or another, the siblings of the one who are abused, who have not been abused, often in adulthood develop the borderline personality disorders, rather than direct disorder kind of thing. And that's their direct effect of being in the environment of that terror. And
so it's a really valuable book for anybody to read. And it also addresses sort of the schizophrenia of the society. Okay, so it also talks about the collective aspects of schizophrenia. And I think we're going to do a second interview with her on the collective aspects, which are also very palpable in our environment, even tonight with the Georgia election still going on tomorrow.
I do love what Obama said, though. He said, Herschel Walker's, it's good that he's entertaining that difference between werewolves and vampires. I entertained that argument myself when I was 7.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That was
I don't know.
beautiful.
The fact that he actually resides in Texas, these days, I don't know.
Yeah.
Politics will take anybody.
Yeah. Well, I can use my prophetic arm to say that Warnock is going to win this one in a walk, and by quite some margin. And it'll be a lot more than you think it is, and we'll see. But,
Well, what I do like though about recent politics is that it seems that a lot of younger people are voting, and so
yes,
there's always
yes.
a huge unknown factor, and it's their world, and it's
Sure,
you
it's
know
their
they'll be,
world. They're gonna get it whether they like it
Yeah.
or not.
so they're
So,
they're jumping in to take the helm, as it were.
right.
That way.
So anyway, I'm going to call this evening to a close. Ray, I hope you can join us at 1 p.m. on Wednesday.
Yeah, I have it on my calendar.
Yeah, when Tim is going to share the meeting, because I won't be there until 5 my time, 2
Oh, that's
p.m.
right. 1 p.m. You're on Pacific
Right.
time. Got it.
But I don't want to change the time this week, although I could, because most people said they wouldn't mind 2 p.m. Pacific time. But and I need it if I'm going to stay in the middle schools, but if I'm going to switch to an elementary school, then I get out much earlier. I have to be at school at 6:30 in the morning, but
So you
but
guys know that I am a veteran of 17 years of teaching middle school and high school, right?
no, I
did.
didn't know that. What classes were you teaching?
English, language arts,
Wow.
and sometimes social studies.
Uh-huh.
So I
Why?
was 6 years at the middle school, I think, and then I was the rest of it at the high school with juniors and seniors.
And how did you feel about the juniors and seniors?
I loved them. I actually loved the seventh graders as well.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't love sixth graders or eighth graders, and I was able to kind of choose after a year to do the seventh grade.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the assignment was with gifted kids, but the rest of the assignment was just with the whole melange of Hispanic kids and recents. But I found that seventh graders are very eager about life.
Mm-hmm.
And they still have childlike qualities where you can give them a project and they are willing to kind of make fools of
Yeah.
themselves. That's all over by eighth grade.
Yeah.
Forget about it. And I also found juniors to be like that. The seniors were too arrogant, but the juniors were very open to me and very
Right.
interested in my ideas. And, so there's that aspect to it. But
That's really interesting, because immediately what came to mind is, sixth grade, you're plunged into middle school and you're in a new place. So, freeze, you have to acclimate. Seventh grade, you've relaxed again, but you're in a whole nother place. And like you said, they're eager. And then eighth grade, you're kind of the baby arrogance of, we're the upperclassmen. It's like you're in eighth grade.
Well, it all depends how a school is structured, but I
Yeah.
think just by their very nature.
Okay.
Just seventh graders are, yeah.
Well, I'm interviewing for fifth grade on Friday. At 7:15 in the morning is my interview. I think that may be a first.
Well, good luck. Good luck with it. If you want any advice, just write me. I'm sure I'm full of advice.
That's cool that you were a teacher for 17.
And so Nick, you are is this flag behind you a new statement of your patriotism?
I don't know. I don't think so. I wouldn't consider it necessarily a statement of anything. I mean, it's just something
Decoration.
I have that I put up as decoration.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. It gives everybody pause for, Personally, I love the American flag.
Yeah, I do too. And
I gotta say, my team did not do a good showing in the World Cup. So now I'm moving my loyalties to France.
To France.
Okay, well, so far I'm moving to Netherlands, but
No. España or Francia. Francia, España.
I gotta quit this show.
or Argentina. I mean, but look at I saw this hilarious
Argentina, yes, good.
This hilarious video, you must look for it on Google. It's worth mentioning. Where
On
the
YouTube? On
yeah,
YouTube?
it's on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube. It
Okay.
is the Saudi coach who is French, and he does not speak Arabic. So the French coach has to give his advice in English to the translator who translates it into Arabic. And it is
Is it a spoof or is it real?
no, it's real. It was a video from the locker room, and it was just hilarious.
Well, anyway,
But
I'm gonna
those-
go, but
Yeah, their team beat the Argentinians once this time, so they're not awful this time. But that video was right, coach. The Saudis
then
was
a good video is YouTube is well, of course, Trevor Noah is brilliant, but you know,
Yeah.
his imitation of this Georgia candidate was just a scream. And Saturday Night Live, which I never watched, but my sister said, you have to watch this. And they did such a wonderful send-up of that guy.
yeah. In fact, I think it is Trevor Noah who introduces this video of the French coach of the Saudi team. So anyway,
We need
Pete-
humor in our lives.
Yes, we
need
do.
humor.
yep.
Yeah.
We're not
Okay.
laughing at them, we're laughing with them. It was actually sent to me by a Saudi friend, so it is good though. Anyway, peace. Take care.
Peace.
Bye,
Good
everybody.
night.
All right. Good
Bye-bye.
night, everyone. See you next week. Well, that will be our last week on this book next
Okay.
week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.